Welcome to the Pain-Free Athlete Podcast. I'm your host, Dana Jones. I am a certified personal trainer, and I'm here to help you achieve your fitness goals without pain. In each episode, I'll share tips and strategies that will help you stay safe and pain-free while you're working out. I'll also interview experts in the field of fitness and pain management. So if you're ready to learn how to stay active and pain-free, then subscribe to the Pain-Free Athlete Podcast today. Hi, everyone, and welcome to the Pain-Free Athlete Podcast. I'm your host, Dana Jones. Today, I am joined by Shawn Richardson. He's the innovative creator of the BAMF Hammer.
That's correct.
That is correct. There we go. A versatile training tool designed to build rotational strength, power, and mobility for athletes of all backgrounds. With a background rooted in hands-on experience and a passion for functional movement, Shawn has helped countless athletes unlock new levels of performance while prioritizing injury prevention and long-term resilience. We'll dive into the unique benefits of the hammer training, explore Shawn's journey as a product developer, and learn how unconventional tools like the BAMF Hammer can transform athletic training for sport and life. Welcome to the show.
Thanks so much for having me. I really appreciate it.
So is it BAMF or BAMF or?
I mean, I call it BAMF. I'm a bit of a comic book nerd, so if you're an X-Men fan, you'll get the reference. But it's the bodybuilding and mobile functionality hammer. So both in the bodybuilding space and the mobile functionality space, we got people coming and going.
So that's awesome. I love it. So who are you? Comic book nerd, obviously.
Yeah, I'm a guy with an acting degree that didn't like the industry, even though he liked the craft. And over time, sword fights and, hey, let's light you on fire and all this little bits of stuff in live theater. But when the actual performance career didn't work out, transitioned into fitness because it was always a secondary passion, something I liked a lot. And was training boot camps and private clients out in Los Angeles. And when my son was born, we moved to Georgia. I was working with a boot camp company at the time and my family here. And that's where the hammer was born. Marvel, the MCU was coming out. And as a comic fan and an acting fan, I'm like diving into these actors' processes and all the rest of it. And my dad's family worked in lumber. So I grew up with a sledgehammer. So while I really liked what Chris Evans did with the shield, I was watching Hemsworth throw the hammer around. I was like, I don't know if that's how that will work, which is a really dorky thing to think. But it led to me building a prototype. It weighed about 30 pounds. And within 5 minutes, I almost dislocated my shoulder because for all of the training that I'd had up until that point, my capacity for rotational strength was just not there. And that got me thinking, why, really? And as I goofed with the hammer, the first prototype, it feels like a kettlebell in a lot of regards. The handle orientation's different, but feels like a kettlebell. And I was a fan of mace. I was a fan of Indian club and was going, okay, we got some similar modalities here. Flash forward a couple of years, I'm officially making them out of rubber. And now you can slam them on an appropriately tough target. Like you can't slam it on your deck, but your driveway be just fine. And it's replacing this sledgehammer and tire modality that I'd always kind of had a bit of a problem with, just based on how the sledgehammer is shaped. And with the hammer, because of a shorter handle, because I want to be able to flip it and, do various things with it without being able to lose the posterior chain loading of like a kettlebell swing. So if I use a mace for that modality, the mace is too long. We just kind of find this perfect little short-handled, heavy thing that you can transition from kettlebell to mace work to sledgehammer and tire and back again without having to switch pieces of equipment. You don't need to keep a big tire on hand. You can throw one piece of equipment in your vehicle and you've got your home gym for, stop at a park, get your workout in, go to a parking lot, get your workout in. That's kind of where it all started. And then, I don't know, must have been before 2016 or right about then, maybe 2015, somebody, while I was pursuing the patent, a friend of mine was like, hey, can I buy one of those from you? I guess. I don't know what it would cost, but that started everything up. We, BAMF Hammer won the first ever Dollar Shave Club Your Thing campaign, where they gave 10 grand of marketing material to somebody just trying to start their thing. Flew us back out to Los Angeles, put us up for a weekend. It was great. Went on American Ninja Warrior in 2016. Blew my knee out in 2017, had to have surgery there, surgery on the elbow from Ninja Warrior stuff. But the hammer's kind of always been there in the background going, okay, what can I fix with it? What is it the appropriate tool for? What is it not quite the appropriate tool for? And it's been there ever since. So I put my hands on a hammer almost every day of the week and swing it around to some degree. And I only hit myself in the face like once a week.
Awesome. We don't do a lot of rotational stuff in the fitness world. It's
We do
it's
not.
really kind of sad.
It
And I even had somebody tell me the other day, like, "Oh, I don't think it's good for your back to rotate." And I kind of looked at him, well, if it wasn't good, your body wouldn't be able to do it.
That's true. The one that I get all the time is, "Oh, I can't do that. I have bad shoulders." And for me, I'm like, that's a bit like saying the dog you keep chained in the basement that you don't feed and kick every day is a bad dog. That's an abused dog. Like, there's a reason it bites you. It's because it hates you because of how you treat it. And in Western strength training, we have a tendency to treat the shoulder like it's a knee or like it's an elbow. So
Yes.
we give it a range of motion and we ask it to move up and down because in the West, we train for the appearance of functionality,
Mm.
not actual functionality. And recently I've been doing some looking because I know I've got some claims where it comes to the hammer that are kind of way out. Like I'm making some big claims with it. And but trying to find the longitudinal data on studies for Indian clubs, maces, the sample sizes are so small. It's really sport specific. So I found one for female handball athletes. I found one for there. You get a lot with cricket, which makes sense
Yes.
because of the influence of Indian culture on Indian clubs, gadas, and cricket is bigger in India than baseball is. So that makes a little bit more sense. But even those studies, we're talking about between 6 and 12 week studies, not huge sample sizes. And they all come back and go, it creates more space in the glenohumeral joint, which allows for more lubrication, which allows for better mobility in that joint. Whereas what hypertrophy training does is it puts in the muscle this residual tension that closes those joints together. And it's disadvantageous for the creation of space. So asking your arm to move in these huge ranges of motion under load helps separate that and gives the fluid of your body a chance to enter that joint. So what I've found as I've applied it in various modalities, more specifically, I use it a lot with the Ninja Warrior community, the friends of mine that I had, because that's a community that it's professional, the floor is lava, and they are kids at play. There's no, I won't say there's no, because it's been a minute since I've been in the community and the level of skills really gone up. But when I was doing it in 2016 through 2019, you were not seeing guys having conversations about progressive overload and not a lot about recovery. They just play and you see the injury profiles as a result. 18, 19-year-old kids who've been doing it for 10 years getting multiple cortisone shots a year in their shoulders and their elbows and their wrists. And I just look at that and go, I mean, it's impressive what we can make our athletes do, but at what cost? And when the majority of people walking around are not going to be playing pro sports, meaning they're not going to be making the money that makes it worth it for them to have an elbow that hurts every time it rains for the last 60 years of their life, how do we address this so that we create a healthier population that can really push the limits of physical training without paying the price of a body that can't function after 45. And I just see this line of athletes throughout India and, the Western Asia areas of the world that are rotating these heavy loads, and they do not look like what we were growing up thinking of as athletes, which for the most part were bodybuilders, which is a whole different conversation. But these are guys that look like they need a sandwich and a nap, but they're rotating 100 pounds of concrete on a bamboo rod for multiple minutes at a time. And it's just insane to watch them do it. And then, yeah, you get Western athletes who are like, is that going to hurt you? I've had this conversation with my dad. Isn't that going to hurt your back? I'm like, no, it's going to hurt. Well, that's not true. It's going to hurt a back that can't move. We spend so much time either telling older deconditioned populations to stop moving, or even in the CrossFit modality, it's core to extremity. You're going to have this stable sternum to hip bone. And then
Brace.
and it's the transfer of momentum from leg to arm or arm to leg. But unless you're doing like sit-ups, GHDs, something like that, we're really not doing a lot of moving around. And then you get guys like, David Weck's a crazy example of like the spinal engine movement in the United States. And I don't think the guy's the messiah, but he says things that as an industry looking for truth, we need to weigh and go, okay, where's the application? Because maybe it's 10% and maybe it's 70%. It depends on the athlete. But if we can make an athlete better and we can also make them healthier, that to me seems like a win. And that's what we've been doing. I just do it with a great big hammer. Like the technology's not new. It's been around forever. That's something I hear online all the time. It's like, it's just an Indian club. I'm like, okay, well, are you using Indian clubs? No. Like, okay, well, maybe use a big hammer. I don't care.
Well, and for a lot of us, we just don't go outside the bounds. When you go to a
Sure.
gym, that's I work with what I have,
Hmm.
but specifically because my clientele has a tendency of being a little bit older and female, our shoulders are shredded.
Hmm.
And because people only move in 2 directions with their shoulders.
Yeah.
So it's either out or up.
Out.
And there's not a whole lot of rotation that happens, and I'm finding people with bicep tendonitis, all the things that kinda go along with that packed on muscle tightness that goes with a shoulder that hasn't ever moved properly.
That's right. And this is not me saying that needs to come off the table. The handful, about half of the studies that I looked at really only incorporated rotation in the warm up and saw extremely positive results. So this is not me saying, ditch your shoulder day. It's me going, take an extra 10 minutes and just rotate something around your head and butter that joint up so that when you go start throwing the heavy loads, it's a well lubricated machine. But I've coached at CrossFit gyms. I worked at a crunch, which is hell, not actual hell, but it's icky. And you walk around these places and there's no piece of equipment for rotation. There's none. And so what do you see? You see people bringing their own bands and they'll hook it up to something and they're like, okay, I'll do some of these and I'll do some of these and I'll do some of these. But you're doing the same thing. You're taking the joint and you're rotating an axis and you're rotating an axis and you're rotating this axis. But we never jump from A, B, C, D, E and back again. And that's what your shoulder is designed to do. If you look at the thing that evolutionary biologists will add to the list of like the 3 things that separate mankind from all the rest, we can throw a ball with accuracy. Like chimps can throw, but they don't throw with accuracy. Like and maybe we just haven't trained the chimps to play baseball any which way but loose. But the man's ability to be accurate is dependent entirely on the smooth transition of one muscle system to the other through the rotation of the shoulder joint and how that system is built on the way the body reacts with the earth. So the way the hip moves, the way the torso moves in conjunction with that, and then the tip of the finger is the crack of the whip that creates accuracy with a projectile. So the thing that separates us, unless you're like a pitcher or a baseball player or a sport specific athlete, we don't incorporate very often. What we see is a system that is built around the idea that your worth as a person can be quantified by the number of strangers on social media that want to see you naked. And so we pursue the perception of functionality, and it leads to injury all the time. The CrossFit Games are usually a pretty good indicator of what that looks like. Every year at the games, there's an injury du jour. This year, it's
I'm sure.
everybody's getting this. This year, it's everybody's getting this. And I remember a handful of years ago, it was pec tears. They were doing ring dips for speed, which throughout the lead up to the games, there were hundreds of athletes that ripped pecs. And I'm sitting there going, that muscle is massive. Do you have any idea what has to be going wrong in the joint? That's like, I don't know, the right analogy is not
I
coming to me right
remember seeing a bodybuilder, and this was back in the '80s, and he tore his pec, and they in Muscle and Fitness, and they documented it.
now. Hmm.
And so you saw how it was rolled up into his
Hmm.
deltoid, and then his chest just looked like somebody took a hammer to his chest. It was just the bruising was
Yeah.
insane, and you knew that it had to hurt. I can't even imagine surgery for that and what it looks like.
Yeah. It,
It's crazy.
we had a guy at Crunch one morning pop his pec, and he was being an idiot. But it was early in the morning. I think it was his first or second set. He was dead cold, and he went for like a 2 rep max because he was hanging out with guys 10 years younger than him. And you heard it across the gym. Like,
Oh.
the guy passed out. It was funny because I saw his wife come to pick him up, and she was laying into him for being an idiot. But, you see that stuff, but even without injury, I've taken a 40-pound hammer and given it to a guy who could bench press 405 for 8 3 times a week. Homeboy rides the bench press. Leg day is a distant horizon. Never have I ever. And I asked him to take 40 pounds in the shape of a hammer and put it over his head. And the uneven distribution of load, he's like, why can't I do this? And I'm looking at him going, why are you asking me, bro? Why can't you do this? This is 10% of your 1 rep max on the bench press, and you've got no control. But you're going to take that thing for a ride? I think maybe you're relying on your slingshot a little bit too much, because if that thing snaps, you're a dead man. And if the goal is lift heavy, don't stop lifting heavy. Just lubricate the joint properly so that you can continue to lift heavy. If you don't want to lift heavy, great. Lubricate the joint so that you're not, a bad night of sleep or a day working in the yard is not going to lay you up. I just think there's this separation between the perception of functional fitness and actual functional fitness. And culturally, we have some markers that let us know this is there. The perception of farm boy strong, that's
Mhm.
been around forever. You want somebody to help you move? I am asking a farm boy. I'm not asking Mr. Olympia, because I want somebody who can help me do it all day, not somebody who has to stop every 15 minutes and eat some protein. But
Right.
it's it's an interesting little world, and I have yet to find a place in strength and conditioning where the hammer does not bring something to the table. The thing that keeps it out of people's training routines is, hey, I don't like that thing. And that's okay. Like, I really don't have a problem with somebody going, hey, that equipment is not for me. At the end of the day, I think the thing that all of the fitness industry should be united against is the couch and the lazy boy, and the end of Wall-E, where you see all of humanity riding around in, hover chairs, drinking their food out of a straw. And
Rascals.
yeah, but that's where we're going. You see the medical, like, I've worked myself with a lot of older clientele with the hammer, a lot of deconditioned athletes, and every one of them has the same story. It's like, my doctor thinks I'm doing too much. And I'm like, I think your doctor needs to be fired. Deadlifts used to be prescribed. They used to be called the health lift, because it's a very safe lift. You can load the body a lot. You get the bones going, hey, we need to maintain our density, otherwise this load's not going up. There's a lot of benefit to this stuff. But now when a doctor can be sued for giving their opinion is always, don't do anything. Sit there, consume these pills until you die. And you don't have to, but you end up looking like a weirdo with a giant hammer going the other way.
Yeah, but we're also working toward, longevity with health
Yeah.
because, and I think Vonda Wright was talking about this. It's like, well, our life expectancy, I think in the United States, is somewhere around 77 for males and females. But when you're getting to that, or people who are exceeding that, they're in a home,
Hmm.
they're in a chair,
Yep.
they're spending, I can't remember what she was saying, they're spending more time in the doctor's office. Like, it's something like 3 weeks a year or something like that, or spent in the doctor's office for somebody over the age of 75 or whatever. But it was kind of crazy.
Yeah.
And for me, I don't wanna go out like that. Like, I wanna have a good time and
Yeah,
and be doing an activity that I enjoy.
exactly.
One of the things that I enjoy is playing softball, and I've noticed that rotational strength actually plays a huge role
Absolutely.
in movement, because I think there's a lot of times where the application is just into swinging a bat, but it's not, because if you're thinking about when you're fielding and you have to go for a backhand, you have to rotate your body
Mhm.
while you're planting your feet to be able to get that backhand and to have the strength and the ability to make that play and then right yourself and then throw. Is you're rotating on so many different levels. You wanna be able to do that without throwing something out or
E
whatever you may think
Yeah,
happens.
exactly, and, as a coach, I'm sure you're very familiar with this. Most of our athletes, when they come to us and go, "Yeah, I tweaked something in my back," it's like, "Were you lifting something?" "No, I just, like,
Right.
got to the end of the
Sneeze.
set of steps." My morning boot camp guy, um, that I was telling you about before we started recording, threw his back out last week, and I saw him this morning, was like, "So how'd you do it?" And he goes, "A step And I was like, what? He goes, I didn't stub. He was so angry. He's like, I didn't stub my toe. I didn't trip on anything. I wasn't carrying anything. It just got to the bottom of the step and my back went, "Meh." I was like, but that's what we've become culturally is it, if you
The
could take a,
fear of being injured.
yeah, but if you could take a kid, if we could eliminate desks in school, keep them out of shoes until they're 18 and eliminate toilets. That one's weird, but hear me out. If you could do that for a kid until they're 18 years old, I would love to see a longitudinal study on what their life is like when they're 80. Because, and I take this from a buddy of mine who deployed a couple of times to Afghanistan, and he tells this story of being so ticked off his whole platoon because they went to this tiny little village and they got invited to the fireplace, and the guys are sitting around, and these 80-year-old men are dropping into the bottom of the squat completely flat-footed, sitting up straight, ass to grass, and just sitting there for 30 minutes, eating, and then they stand up and walk away like nothing's happening. And this platoon of, he was a long-range sniper, but these elite level army soldiers, they're all stuck. Like they can't get up. They're on the shelf for 15 or 20 minutes while they rub blood back into their legs. And you're like, that's the best that we got to offer. And he's being bodied by this goat herder who just never has had a chair or a toilet or
Mhm.
athletically supported shoes. I don't think correlation doesn't necessarily equal causation, but I've got freaking questions about our perception of doing the best and whether or not it's actually the best for our life. Because you're right. If you're spending the last 15 years of your consciousness in a chair or with a walker or in a wheelchair or in a bed, now we have a question of whether or not you're living or just not dying. And I remember that with my grandfather. He puttered forever. Like the one thing he had a split level, and he got to the point where the stairs hurt his knees. So he would take his riding lawnmower up and down from the upper floor to the bottom floor. But it wasn't until my grandmother was in hospice with dementia, and he was the only person she recognized. She couldn't tell you who he was. He was just the only person that she liked. And the moment he went in that building, he didn't have anything to putter with,
Mm.
and he broke his hip. And like my grandmother passed in about 6 months, and I think he broke his hip about 3 months after that and didn't get up off the surgical table. When we stop moving, like the timer started till you stop moving. And so finding something that takes an athlete and goes, what is this? Like it starts to feel good, like moving these rotational patterns. And it doesn't have to be overly complicated, but they're like, it feels good to twist like this. That's because that's how it's meant to be. Your body's supposed to be able to do that. And when we were kids, that's what we were doing all the time. You and I have enough gray hair that I can be like, when we were kids, not when my kids are kids, but like, um,
Yeah, we were
go.
outside, we were playing, we were doing different sports, it depended on the season, we were playing
Yeah.
baseball, we were playing football, we were playing, piling onto one another.
Yeah, exactly. Can't say what that game was called anymore.
Yes,
Um,
no,
but
but I was jumping off a dirt ramp, riding a bike. I mean, we were doing whatever we wanted to do, and, these people don't do that, and I think there is a little weirdness where you're kind of expecting a gym to be able to handle the things that you can't do anymore or that we're just I know a lot of people that I work with just wanna get off the ground.
mhm,
And when you were talking about your friend earlier, I had a woman I work with who was in the Peace Corps, and she was in Sierra Leone, and she said the same thing, that those women would get down in a squat and they would prepare dinner and do all the things, and they'd be down in that spot for 2, 3 hours
mhm,
and then just get up and walk away. And a lot of times they had their kids on their back or their chest or whatever. And it was no big deal for them to move like that. And nobody was complaining about their hips or their feet or their knees or anything. That was just how they are. And I think that, especially in my world and dealing with chronic pain, a lot of it is the anticipation. And I've been doing some reading lately where we're talking about this anticipatory oldness that is
mhm,
kind of coming in, where people are afraid their knees pop and they make a sound and like, oh, I'm getting old now, or their shoulder does something. And instead of attacking it, they're just just giving up and saying, okay, well, I guess I can't do that anymore
mhm,
because, 40-year-olds don't do that.
yeah.
And that's a really shitty way to live your life because eventually everything's going to become very small and you're going to be in a walker or in a bed or whatever, and breaking of your hip is going to be at the end of your life.
Yeah.
And I'm sorry to hear about your grandfather, but that's unfortunately that is a recipe for disaster for probably 90% of the elderly population is that they break a hip and then their lives become so small, and what's the point of sticking around?
Yeah, and, it's we get to the point where we allow minor inconveniences to set up a boundary that for whatever reason, we decide to respect and go, "Okay, pain, you've taken this territory." And I think a lot of that is surrounding the way that our medical system in the United States works. And I was talking to somebody on a different podcast about this. I was like, the best thing, if you hate medical overreach, the whole thing, the way the insurance company works, all of it, the best thing that you can do, the most punk rock finger to the government thing you can do is be healthy without their help. It's the best thing you can
Yeah.
do.
Don't go,
No,
right?
don't go. Like, if you think this, because the system is so broken, but as long as all of us are continuing to pour our money into it all the time, and let's be clear, I'm not a politician. I'm talking out of my butt right now. But if you can locally source your food and not stop moving, like supplement your vitamins with food first, figure out what medicinal properties you can eat rather than crush into a pill. I've got one of these, the ancient apothecary books, and I'm because I was curious and it was relatively cheap. But one of the disclaimers it gives in the front is like, if you're on a medication that does what this tincture says it's going to do, don't take both. And I found that to be interesting to go, hey, if you're taking this blood pressure medication, don't do this blood pressure concoction of stuff. And we survived. Sure, infection was a huge thing. Penicillin is the bee's knees, but there's other stuff out there where you're like, do I really need that? I'm pretty sure just, blueberries and then frozen blueberries or whatever. But movement really is medicine. And you see, one of my favorites is the best way to make a bodybuilder throw up is bear crawls. It's real simple because all you've done is turn their cardiorespiratory system parallel to the ground. And now their heart doesn't have to pump as hard. And so their blood pressure will skyrocket, their stomach will go acidic, and they'll yak. And you just go, here is this specimen of, or apparent specimen of physiology and a true testament to what can be done with hypertrophy and macro loading. I'm not crapping on them at all. There's things that we only know about what physiology can do because a bunch of psychopaths that were around in Schwarzenegger's day were like, we're going to take this horse medication. Like, didn't care at all. So credit where it's due. But at the same time, if early on when I was living in Los Angeles and really starting to like dedicate myself to fitness, and arrogant as all hell, one of my favorite things to do was try and work in with a bodybuilder doing pull-ups and knock out a set of muscle ups because I thought I was cool. But, used to joke that I could punch one of these guys in the face and walk backwards slowly. And after 20 feet, I'd be like, he wouldn't be able to catch me because he's out of cardio. Like he could power walk to me. But really, that's just a difference in choice. And he's healthier than the person who has been told what I was told when I had my knee replaced, that I would never run again. If I had respected that, I'd have lost the last, I don't know, 8 years, 2017. So yeah, 8 years. I came out of surgery and the surgeon was like, it was a lot worse than we thought. He'll never run again. And I went to a physical therapist that respected that for 6 sessions. And then I fired that guy and found somebody who was crazy. I was like, I need to go up a warped wall to be ready for Ninja Warrior Season 2 in 90 days. She was like, that's nuts. Okay. You don't get to tell me no anymore. I was like, all right, game on. Like, that's what I want. And we did it. So just, but when it comes to, upper body rotation or anything else, you're starting to see these guys. There's this dude I love on social media. He's got it's a 20-pound wooden sword that looks like it came out of an anime. And he just swings this thing around. The guy's shredded out of his mind. Who cares if you're playing anime? His body is going to be more resilient just because he's used to these odd angles and extreme loads, and he's creating balance and rotation and all this stuff. He's playing still. And I think a lot of what
Well,
our
that's what it is, right? Isn't that the
yeah,
point? If it's work, then nobody wants to do it, but if you get to play, then that's what makes Ninja Warrior fun, or at least
Yeah, right
a
up until you hit the
spectator.
ground.
As a spectator, it's totally fun. "Look, I get to jump over stuff."
Yeah.
But, what you're saying, of course, I was thinking about Ben Patrick, and I can't remember
Yeah.
who he was, working out with, but he was working out with, Strongest Man, or no, he was working out with, dang, can't remember, the big bodybuilding, heavy lifting dudes.
Was it Jujimufu, the guy who flips?
No,
Okay.
it was somebody else, but, thick dude, and the guy was dying because they were pushing a sled, and that was something that obviously wasn't a part of his workout routine, and then you have Ben Patrick, who's not, what is he, like 175, maybe 180?
Maybe.
Yeah, that's about it, and he's totally crushing this guy on pushing the sled with the same amount of weight and everything else because his thing is all about the movements that we don't normally do
Mhm.
because he's trying to live as long as possible. His mom is pulling a sled with 1,000 pounds on it, walking backwards because that's what she's doing every day, and she's enjoying herself. And I wanna be, 70 years old and be able to throw my grandkids in the air and do all the things that she's doing too, because that's
Yeah,
badass, you know?
exactly. And life is fulfilling then. At
Yes.
least I look at the things that fulfill me in my life now and go, "I don't wanna have to say, 'No, I can't.' I don't wanna have to say, 'No, I can't.'" And there are times now where one of my kids will say something like, "I just," and then you go, "No, the moment you stop, stopping is easy."
Yeah, can't limit yourself.
So that's our kind of thing. It's like I think there are two sides to what I'm trying to do with the BAMF Hammer. One of them is go incorporate rotation. Doesn't have to be my kit. If you like maces better, or you like meals, or heavy Indian clubs, or plates or kettlebells, whatever, treat your shoulder like a shoulder, and you will have a positive impact on your training. But the other side of it is like, you and I could hop into the weeds about the practical application of this discipline over this discipline. But I'd rather look at, I think I told you this when we chatted before the podcast, but like a couple days ago, but I saw a stat that said the average American has a higher body fat percentage than the average American pig. And you're like, okay, we're officially fatter than our fat snacks by average. That can't last. And if, I don't know, you can get political on it, if you really hate the government for whatever reason, you got to cut the cord. Like, you can't, it makes sense in my mind. I won't say you can't. It makes sense to me that the greatest rebellion is ignoring them, not needing them. Like, no, I
Yes.
don't need you for this. No, I'm fine. I don't need you. That's okay. But yeah, it's a life of movement has adventure in it. And I think one of the things that I know I have been reflecting on a lot recently, and I think the United States in general should reflect on a little bit more, is how we are being conditioned to watch people have adventures instead of going and having them ourselves. Because you can't really do both,
It is
if
so
I,
true. John,
so
thank you so much
thank you for
for,
having me. This is great.
this. Yeah, it was very good. So how do people get in touch with you?
Let's see. On the Instagram, it's BAMF Hammer, BAMF Hammer. The other thing that I'm doing right now, and I'm trying to do something free this year, but I've been coaching for almost 20 years, and I have a school, SKOOL platform. It's free to join. And what we're doing is I'm going through the 4 things that I've seen as a coach that hitch people up if they have a New Year's resolution about fitness. Everybody makes the same mistake that falls off. They assume that on January 1st, they're going to be a different person. And they spend the 2 months leading up to January 1st going hog wild on all types of, you start at Halloween and then you stuff your face with leftover candy for 4 days. And then we start to see like Thanksgiving showing up, and 5 days of celebration becomes 6 weeks of like gluttony. And then you get blackout on New Year's Eve, and you wake up January 1st at 5 a.m. thinking you're going to be effective in the gym. And it's a recipe for disaster. And it's no wonder everybody's off by the middle of February. So for free, I'm just building for people and going, look, these are the 4 things that I see. We're going to change your relationship with water without judgment. Okay. How much water did you drink? And now how much water do you drink if coffee and, tea and beer and soda and all the rest of it don't count? Get an honest idea, because you're dehydrated. Like, maybe you're consuming enough fluid, but most of them are diuretics. So you're dehydrated. Then let's look at your relationship with sleep. Next 2 weeks, let's do sleep. How much sleep do you get? How many times a night do you go to bed, like close your eyes and try to sleep after looking at a blue light? Maybe we can't get you 8 hours, but maybe we can get you 1 hour more and an hour off your device beforehand. When was the last time you read a book? You used to love books, things like that, and go, we're going to set a foundation for your New Year's resolution so that instead of being terrified to go to the gym January 1st because of all the promises you made to yourself that you failed to do last year and the year before and the year before, this time, maybe you're turning away drinks on the 1st, going, nuh-uh, I've been looking forward to starting tomorrow for 6 weeks now. Like, I'm so ready to go. And with that foundation, feeling like, because the thing that kills people is not the workout on the 1st. The thing that kills people is their body's ability to recover. That's why they quit around mid-February, because they're so sore and they're so broken. And maybe they're paid for a great program, but their body cannot recover from their lifestyle, and that takes longer to build. So that's what we're doing over on school. If you message me at BAMF Hammer on the Instagram, I'll shoot you links for it. But that's really where people can find me right now. And if you have questions about rotating giant hammers, let me know. There's only one person there, and it's me. And a lot of my day is spent responding to messages and calling people and going, all right, let's find the right hammer for you. And if the hammer's not right for you, I know a bunch of people that make rotational kit. I love spreading the love. So if I can sell some equipment for friends of mine, I'll do that too.
That's awesome. Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate your time.